All right, good morning. So we'll start with making a mental offering as a token for requesting teachings, and then Geshe will lead the way with refuge and bodhicitta. So start with this. Sashi Bhuki Jushi Mezo Kamri Rabli Shi Nide Pali Sangye Shiru Mite Owa Giro Kunanda Chila Chupa Shoidam Guru Ragnamandalagani Adayami Sanye Chodam Soji Chonanga Chancho Badu Dani Gyasuchi Dagi Chushigi Hetsonangi Rola Preche Sangye Dropa Sho Sanye Chodam Soji Chonanga Chancho Badu Dani Gyasuchi Dagi Chushigi Hetsonangi Rola Preche Sangye Dropa Sho Sanye Chodam Soji Chonanga Chancho Badu Dani Gyasuchi Dagi Chushigi Hetsonangi Rola Preche Sangye Dropa Sho Kangi tuzi nizune, tawa tongji bambi cheri, bambi cheri, benzi, kodam kela chansi no. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Eda Kondu Chidantan and Tsultrim and King Batteries around Sanji Chizom and Sanji Chizom Chanju Party down just said he and on Sanji Chu Yamni Chion that Jamdru Nong and Duquech and Jamdru Nong, Chu country Chiwi and Yamni country Chiwi, Jamdru Nong and Duquech. We started this session with reciting the verse for refuge and bodhicitta, in saying to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly, I go for refuge until I'm enlightened. But the accumulations I gather through generosity and so forth may become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings. So whatever Dharma practice we undertake, all of it is included within this verse for going for refuge. Whatever practice we do, it is all subsumed under the practice of going for refuge.
Choose and choose Yamni Chigo said, choose Denzin Chimasha, and Gindu Kunjose, Denzin Chiman, Denzin Sun Tony, Tangan Yamni Chetanchi, Kamu Kunjusun Hranton, in which Tangan reaching Dosra.
So the verse says, I go for refuge to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Right, beginning with the Buddha. So actually, when we look at the objects of refuge, we can divide it into three sections. First of the Buddha, second is the Dharma, and the third is the Sangha. So whatever practice we undertake through going for refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha is influenced by our refuge.
There's that Mancheg that can Mancheg King Dina. The two D and the Sanji D, Tango Shaya D, Sanji D, Nazolia, kept them boko. Ramazuta, mean championship in the Mazu Lamodi, Sanji Conchagas, Ra. We can't give Nazulaya and Chu Momadi and Moderna. Niba the children, that the future Momadi, that's to Suzu be Yamin Chemashidi, and Yamin chasing Jilaya, Trok the Chini, Drasa Trok the Gendu Conjose, and Jiggy Chu Momadi, one be Yamin Chini, Rangula, Yoding, Kansatalia, and Gendu Conjos, but the Jilaya, and then Lamdation and Yamin Chini, but Lagoristan. The deep massive, this is the massive occasion.
So we begin with the Buddha, and we regard the Buddha as the teacher of refuge. Whereas the actual refuge is the Dharma is introduced or taught by the Buddha, right? So that is the actual refuge, the Dharma. And then we have the community or the Sangha, which are those who know how to put it into practice, and as such, they act as companionships or helpers, assistants for us to be able to put the Dharma into practice. So it is really important. There are certain characteristics that are being described with respect to the Sangha, but we keep in mind that the Sangha as the object of refuge are those that we use as companionships or helpers that give us instructions or guidance with respect to how to put the Dharma into practice. So this is really important, as our practices are influenced by going for refuge to the Buddha, to the Dharma, and the Sangha.
And Suzu, that trouble trauma in by Nade, Karini, Lama Givishi, Yiche Yoya, and it tap Yashudi, Yunding Chan Tayati, Sungudus, Yunding Chan. The Mekandachi by Ibania, Corona Yunding, Mengi, Mitch Sigio Marisla, Metoinandra, Moinandra, Kanji Yundi. Change meeting, Kubu Yuan, Channing, some down to Wena. And Lonibu Yonic, Yiche Yonic, Legular, Yuan Chan, some good said, Sanji Lajan, Isich Ra.
And in so doing, in going for refuge, we have a sense of trust in the Buddha. So when we think of trusting someone, we might trust Buddha or Buddhas in plural, or we might have a sense of trust in sentient beings, our friends, our lamas, our virtuous friends, and so forth. The best way to develop trust in others is through looking at the good qualities, through observing the good qualities. When you see the good qualities of others, you can use that as a basis for developing trust. And no one is absent of good qualities. It's not that there's someone that has absolutely no good qualities. Others have good qualities. So then a way of developing a sense of trust in others is to see or to think of their good qualities. So this is a special advice as given by the Buddha to think of the way to develop trust through looking at the good qualities of others.
그래서 당연히 연대 미찬 다운이 깎아야 돼. 교육 통고도 왔어. 교육도 왔어. 같이 따쳐고 말해줘지. 같이 따고 말씀 나와요. 더 받은 용서를. 진짜 교육 찬에 딱 와서 지다 뭐고서 이 샤고도 있으라. 아니 초직이 교육 찬 다운이 캡상 자원이 매워지. 소소의 경고 대대와지 창도 봐요. Rang Shin Paralaya, Ganga Royagi, King Chagdovano, King Diriki, Matas, Masams, Padusunda, Lama Dume Parayavania, King Chan Devana, Tamsigal, Le Shudrovore, Shudrop Hensu Paralini, King Chan Devano, Tamsing Montova Shavore, King Suzulia, never mother Pigmenza, and King Chon Matas, King Chon Tano. So the
advice that is given is to not look for faults, not to look for faults, but to look for good qualities. So if you wonder, how does it work? After all, we see faults in others. Since we see faults in others, then why is it that this section of the teachings tells us that we ought not to look for faults, but to look at the good qualities of others? Well, if we look for faults in others, if we observe the fault of others, we can think about it as using qualities and faults of others in terms of the things that we do need and the things that we do not need. In that, if we look for faults in others, if we observe the faults of others, then it will create a sense of animosity between oneself and others. It is not profitable, it is not advantageous for oneself, because it creates this sense of conflict or animosity between oneself and others. And particularly when we look at that in terms of the relationships between a student and their teachers, or the relationships that we have amongst our Dharma friends, if we tend to observe the faults, if we tend to look for faults in others, it will create a rift between ourselves and others, and as such, the Samaya bonds that we have between students and teachers, Samaya bonds that we have between Dharma friends will be damaged. And therefore, the advice that we're given is not to look for faults, but to observe the good qualities of others.
Tuzu kazu te to tizugi dungan yongre chatan mosong lo yongre ani dige ani doshoke ani chamba de seva de sherang so ta compel dregi tingen ro yobanza dige de kyanta kuris inza kyen ta sachida ta gosachida kyanta mugoseni ti ngunzi ya tugoyati. There was someone never Julia, never coincident Ostra.
All right, so there seems to be quite a lot of echo today. So sorry, the cable connecting the board to my computer is broken, so we're using this mic. Let's try to change the setting and see if it changes anything. All right. Rob, do you hear, is it the same thing? Is there less echo or same? Anyway, in the meantime, Geshe was saying that looking at the thing that we do need to do, we need to reduce our afflictive states of mind. The things which are faulty are our own afflictive states of mind. This is what we need to reduce: our anger, attachment, and ignorance. And what we need to increase to develop our positive states of mind, loving kindness and compassion and so forth. And as such, again, when we look at the things which we need to consider as faults and the things that we do not consider as faults, actually afflictive states of mind are considered to be faulty. So in that sense, there are things that we regard as faults and there are things that we do not regard as faults.
These are the gene told that Sangi and then some told, and Sangi is something with Geshe. dilevano ani sangi kan sombati kan mambati zeba namtai kan kyambati samalo sosu thang ne page ra thang ne page younger thang ne by sosu na page younger that they never know teni kyen kon devano ani sangi da pigla je chansanji raya goka ros but the d is on the down that chapter na negative was
And thus, through looking at the good qualities of Buddha, this heartfelt trust arises in one's mind. So, as such, we use different aids for the development of, first of all, the understanding of the qualities that a Buddha has in order for that to inspire a sense of faith. So, we can look, for example, not only the teachings of the Buddha, but also the life story of the Buddha, the different things that the Buddha said. All of these can inspire us to develop that sense of trust. Otherwise, if we feel that if we neglect some of those parts, if you think that some of them are not things that actually we need to look at or that we need to read or to study, in some sense, you can say that you stop yourself or you prevent yourself from a certain opportunity for developing trust in the Buddha by not developing an understanding of the good qualities as indicated by certain sections of the teachings.
다 산지야 대바 약수 다 산지야 도메 대바 디조 산지 때문에 추 못하고 되니까 용고여서 다 산지 때문에 추 일단은 내가 못한지 전부 다 시도세 다 마음으로 또 강강한 다 투여 거려 말아서 이제 돈도 나오 이내 디츠 돈 잡아요 장인지 장주세 아니 또만 또 싫어세 다 논이 또 주기 코너 송샤가 단디 차라야 아니 민남 주지 수르지 때나 이용 초대버디 아니 산지 때문에 추니 뭐디 디차고다 디토에 상담 저와요 아니 산지를 대박 레트웨치 로 디고를 다 같이 산지 추 산지 수 추야 아니 추소수 로종다 아니 냠슈다 냠네 야 치와요 아니 산지 믹스했다 되는 포인트です So the best type of faith that we can develop, an irreversible type of faith, comes through studying the Dharma, through studying the teachings that the Buddha gave, 84,000 discourses that the Buddha gave. And of course, the extent of the teachings that the Buddha gave is so great that it's difficult to study all of it. But then when we look at the quintessential essence of the teachings of the Buddha, it is all summarized into the development of loving kindness, compassion, bodhicitta, wisdom that realizes emptiness. So then when you think of this set of teachings that the Buddha gave 2,600 years ago, you can see how, first of all, they're relevant even to this point in time. And if you study those teachings in keeping those essences, the quintessential essence of the teachings of the Buddha, loving kindness, compassion, bodhicitta, wisdom that realizes emptiness, Geshe feels that everyone will feel that those teachings are inspiring. So then when we think about it like that, Geshe feels that naturally a sense of faith will arise in your mind. And this is a special approach for the development of faith or trust in the Buddha. The church sangi the church control said, church control song, church pendati, the church said, church valaya, and church valaya police, church sudia, same church, same and chapter mozo, Muki, that's Pacha the Cheva, and churning the tap, the Imuteria, and church was, this seven, this Simply seven Tomshi Taki, the Tomani Tomishero, or Delia, the true moment, Santi true moment, Tisha.
So that's the first object of refuge, the Buddha. Now, the second one is the Dharma. When we think of the Dharma as being the Dharma jewel, the word for that in Tibetan for Dharma is Chu, which has a meaning that is related to making amendments, correcting something, fixing something, transforming it, making amendments. What we fix, what we correct is our own mind stream. Currently, a mind stream is affected by anger, attachment, and so forth, these afflictive states of mind. So enacting a process of transformation in which we correct a mind is in order to eliminate those afflictive states of mind from a mind stream. And the method for doing that is through the development of wisdom that realizes emptiness. This is the real Dharma.
어디다 디자 베나 나도 자스죠 시와데 양아보다 탐지는 준비 시를 편도 소세 추 님보디 동번이 또 시를 디바디 추 뭐마디 난 고론이 비비 추디 산지 추 뭐마디자 비 점바탕야 수르무 소야 서버 공야 되니 딱 아니 좀 좀이야 아니 something 공야 되게 상으로 추 이체 간지 최인고 비 동원님도 시를 용해야 제도 아니 송샤가 레스 나오는 최인고만디 짐바트르서 동들서 디 아니 최인고만디 시작보다 디 가서 기르서도 좀 시작보다 서로
So just in order to illustrate that, Shantideva, a great Indian master, said in his Guide to Bodhisattva of Life, at the beginning of the 9th chapter in the first verse, he said, all these branches were taught for the sake of generating wisdom. And when he said that, he indicated the essence of the Dharma. The essence of the Dharma is wisdom that realizes emptiness. The real Dharma are true paths and true cessations which are brought forward through the development of wisdom that realizes emptiness. That is the essence of the Dharma, wisdom that realizes emptiness. And all the branches that taught before, as Shantideva said, branches such as the perfection of generosity and ethics and patience, undertaking joyous effort, developing concentration or absorption, all of these were taught for the sake of generating the actual Dharma, which is wisdom that realizes emptiness. Which means that when we think of those other practices that were taught by the Buddha and also elucidated by Shantideva, generosity and ethics and patience and undertaking joyous effort and concentration or absorption, are the real Dharma? Well, they're not the real Dharma. They're causes for the real Dharma. The real Dharma is wisdom that realizes emptiness.
그러니까 이제 최고만 있다 아니 너무 더 시를 되셨다 이 관을 보면 기사를 비다 지저서 파시 니 시행 냐는 주고 말했으면 대한 노릇이야. 이 팀이 잡대야 이 거기도 약간지 손들이 거. 무슨 들어가다. 다시 상기 대치우다 내가로 차고 있어.
And that being the case, since the actual Dharma is wisdom that realizes emptiness, then you might be wondering, why then do I need all the others, like generosity and so forth? Wouldn't it be okay just to straight up meditate on emptiness, to develop wisdom that realizes emptiness? Well, that will not work out. We need to combine the other practices in order to then develop the wisdom that realizes emptiness. So we need generosity and ethics and patience and joyous effort and absorption in order to develop the wisdom that realizes emptiness. And this is a really important point, an essential point with respect to the Dharma that we practice.
가제 두리스 야마도와노 아니 준비치 해 써니 문다스요 아니 수고 그 송주이 게와 체와리아 조이상바 아니 균트니 아니 장트니 그 송주스와 그 투주 개체부레셔스요.
The other branches are required, like for example patience and joyous effort. They're indispensable. In that undertaking the practice of patience and joyous effort means that you'll be able to work with hardship. Unless you're willing to work hard and to encounter certain hardship, if you don't have patience, if you don't have joyous effort, you're not going to be able to accomplish much. So we have joyous effort, for example, which is a sense of enthusiasm, being enthused about virtue, which allows you to continuously work at the development of virtue. This is what we have with joyous effort. Since we mentioned patience and joyous effort, Geshe has a story. So he had a dream yesterday, so since we're amongst friends, so it's okay to tell some stories. So Geshe had a dream. So he was hanging out with Mo, and they were hanging out in India, and Geshe's kind of way of walking is really fast, and kind of he was kind of making his way through the crowds, and he wasn't kind of looking out for Mo. So Mo was lagging behind, and at some point, kind of Geshe turned back, and he completely lost Mo. So he went into a restaurant, and since kind of Mo lost sight of Geshe, he was trying to call Geshe, but also Geshe for some reason was holding your phone in his hand. So kind of anyway, Geshe did not pick up the phone, and then he thought that since you guys parted ways and he needs to look for you, he went out and started to look for you in the crowd, and then he found you, and you were kind of you were pretty angry, kind of waving your finger at him. It's like, where have you been? What are you doing? And waving your finger at him. And Geshe was saying that, cool down, practice patience, be patient, practice patience. Geshe woke up today kind of with a smile on his face from this dream. It was so vivid, kind of as if it actually happened. It was so vivid, and kind of you in his dream was so much like you are in real life. Kind of the same.
And it come talk to Sumba shows it down coming and pull to the same as I said, Puya Gamu, the 20 to do. Quit in the change, Kodoba when it looks on
the mod. Okay.
And I'm all a power baby. Drunka can you shit Zubo Shichego.
Oh.
And Kodomo Shichego. More than the men of the consular yes, I should say.
Anyway, it was not just one dream, it was a series of dreams. So, you were the gala. Anyway, you were somewhere, and then you went together with Geshe to look for a hotel or a guest house. So you found the guest house, and it belonged to a Chinese family. It has maybe 3 or 4 stories. So you went up and had a look at the room, and there were a couple of kids that were playing in the corridor. they were playing with a balloon and another toy. So you had a look at the room, and on the way down, you just kind of pocketed the balloons and the other toys, and you hid them at the back of your trousers. So kind of you went down, and actually on the way out, you had to go through a body search, and kind of all those kind of snatched toys, the hidden toys were found, and Geshe was utterly embarrassed. Shame on you, Mo. Anyway, these were Geshe's yesterday's dreams. Pretty awkward, isn't it? Anyway, Geshe is telling all those stories because I'm here, so I can translate that with all the gory details. So Geshe is seizing the opportunity. Anyway, dreams are often regarded by Buddhist scriptures, or they are taught in Buddhist scripture to be an example of things which are not true. There are actually, a dream is given as an example of a falsity, something that illustrates a falsity, which is, Geshe said that it's good to say that, because kind of Geshe's dream are completely opposite to what Mo is, so a dream is a falsity.
But these are kanji chögi ane 다른 디나지도 다른 상황을 찍어 보세요. 가서 대상 수는 이세죠. 죽이는 거스. 디 공투들이야. 정된데 대신 인지처럼 채나 장주선을 주시하는 좋은 교육세. 대화 친구이 추구 싸우기 민지송이었어.
All right, so with that, we're going to go back to the text and pick up from the point that we left off in the previous session. So just have to find the point, because in changing the setting, I completely lost the plot. So let me just find a place in the text. What is that? Du tar en tamala då, va? All right, we're almost there. All right, there it is. So taking suffering from inhabitants and the environment. So we are going to, we have looked at the beginning of the meditation on compassion, and now we're going to look at the way to meditate on compassion. So it says, compassion meditation has two parts: taking sufferings from the inhabitants, living beings, and taking unsatisfactoriness from the environment. But before we go into that explanation, Geshe went back to the previous citation that was taken from the Compendium of the Perfections. This citation ends with saying, or Subdhuru or Bhagavan, likewise, wherever the life faculty is present, there are also the sense faculties. Or Subdhuru, thus, if you have great compassion, you will acquire all other qualities of a bodhisattva. So this is a really important point. So we say that the root of the Mahayana Dharma is compassion. We employ methods for the elimination of afflictive obscurations, cognitive obscurations, afflictions, together with the seeds and the imprints. The essence of that method relies on great compassion. And that being the case, then one question that arises in our mind is, how is it that great compassion is the root of all of that? How is it that it becomes the root of the Mahayana Dharma?
잠소모단 갈매 진실님의 사주입니다. 잠바다니지라 소바디 뭔가 말을 소바다 아니 전담 무슨 가와 마인자 디고스 사치시디 님부터 차리요 말이스 송디 최고마디 라 최고마다 다 말을 송거라 라 디송거라 이내야다 최고자와레스 어디 송거레스.
When Shantideva in his Guide to Bodhisattva Way of Life explained the need or the necessity to develop wisdom, he indicated that it doesn't matter how much you develop loving kindness and compassion, since they are not opposite in their mode of apprehension to delusion, to ignorance. They are incapable of really eliminating ignorance. And yet we say here that compassion is the root of the Dharma. So on one hand, Shantideva is saying, making that claim that love, compassion, and so forth are not opposite in the mode of apprehension to ignorance, and therefore they will not eliminate ignorance. And yet at the same time, we say that compassion is the root of the Dharma. So then how do we reconcile this assertion?
Niji Koran di Duma the Tandu Samaj. Duma the Tandu Samajas. There Duma the Tandu Piggy Dusi Yudi Aji and Sentient Chetawaji Maiba. Susu Kasan is a Maiba. Devan Devata, Duma Mandevi comes from Georgia to be Sentient Samagolia, Nigi, Duma the Tower.
So first off, here when we speak about compassion, we speak about the intention to free all sentient beings from suffering, or the thought, may all of them be free from suffering. So it's not a specific one in that it's not that we focus on just one living beings or a few sentient beings, those who are close to our heart, and wish for them to be free from suffering. So it's not focusing just on specific living beings, but it is one that is extended to all living beings of the 6 realms of existence, with the wish for all of them to be free from suffering.
Travel Nibby, but Tajilaya, Jumros. That Tadi, Sunjan Tamji Duma, the travel Nungi, Sanji Konainza, that's Sunjan Tamji Chizu, and a Sanji Komoto to be somebody Niji Chambores. That did somebody on the tap movement, that Tato, the Nimon Casa, Dumaritza, and a dancing Maribala Sova, Chadan Tidria, to T. Nimbo, and a Damit of the Sheria, and Juliari, don't have the time to give, and it's only chamber then. Never be young over, tell any young to be younger. These are Ninji, Tavachim, it's ours. So the is.
So compassion is the wish for all sentient beings to be free from suffering. So we need to, first of all, work at the method for freeing others from suffering. We want to cultivate the method, to work at the method for others' freedom from suffering. We recognize that only a Buddha can liberate other living beings from suffering. So initially we have the motivation of great compassionate love. Great compassionate love with the wish to liberate other sentient beings from suffering. We recognize that only a Buddha can do that, and thereby we develop the wish for ourselves to become Buddhas in order to free other sentient beings from suffering. Now, in order to become Buddhas, the actual, what we need to antidote is our own afflictive states of mind. So afflictive obscurations, cognitive obscurations, afflictions together with the seeds and imprints. And the antidote for our obscurations is wisdom that realizes selflessness. But great compassionate love is the driving force for the development of wisdom that realizes emptiness, that will act as the antidote to our obscurations, so that on that basis we'll be able to attain the state of enlightenment. And for that reason, we say that great compassion is the root of the Dharma.
Somebody should check the waters. When a Susu Sharani, did the one that should show your then if I will Susu Pipping putting us over, then if I will this means in then if I will touch Susu Choto, the new does the tea word, the country, and it young would die body, and it should Kaju children, teacher, Ninji Samba. Ninji Samba should children, teacher, and it Chanju Samson. Chanju Samson should we have a teacher, and Toman of Sharon, but the Gigi you is.
And as compassion is the root of the Mahayana Dharma, we then might wonder, how then we develop compassion? Well, first off, we need to have a sense of affection to others, to find other sentient beings as being appealing to our mind. And in order to have that sense of affection, to find others as appealing to one's mind, we need to think of the good qualities. And living beings have qualities. And if we are able to recognize the good qualities of others, through that, we'll be able to develop that sense of finding them appealing, sense of affection to them. And through that, we'll develop the wish for them to be free from suffering. So then when we think of how we have a sense of affection or the sense of closeness when we find others as appealing to our mind, we can think of, for example, how we find those who are close to our heart to be appealing. Like, for example, our own children or your close relatives, brothers, sisters, parents, and so forth, or relatives which are more distant, or friends, close friends, distant friends. We have that sense of affection to them to different degrees, and we find them appealing. So then looking at how we care for others with a sense of compassion, and how in order for that compassion to arise, they need to appeal to our mind, we need to have a sense of affection to them. Then we look at the process by which we, first of all, develop that mind that finds all living beings to be appealing to one's mind, a sense of affection to all living beings. On that basis, we develop compassion. Compassion acts as a root for the development of bodhicitta, the mind of enlightenment. And through bodhicitta, or motivated by bodhicitta, we develop wisdom that realizes emptiness, that will lead us at the end to the attainment of the state of Buddha.
아니 로종 송이 다 마시생이 라 마시바니 아 개체우슈 진 송이레스 간스나 세디 나오야 수수니 총비와디 다 상기게 마디 문제치어레스 이자 마이바 상기 로직이야바나 이용 로직다 난기 용거야 로직 송이레스
So then in order to develop this sense of affection or appeal of other living beings, we train our mind. And we train our mind in recognizing sentient beings as having been our mothers. This is so important, to recognize other living beings as having acted as a mother before. So thinking first of all of this life, a mother in this life, we can develop that sense of utter closeness. The person that is closest to our heart in this life is a mother. And if we recognize that on that basis, we can develop a sense of affection, finding them appealing.
These are the March not trouble Geshe trouble Geshe the other than the yours. Could we other than summer? And the Buddha house is
Adelaide.
Adelaide. Tell yours, could we imagine the Geshe teams? But garden tissue the swing, Tsultrim, could get to the Geshe teams. Kashi Pesha incentus, Kashi Suzuki, Gemi incentus, Kashi Choga incentus, Kashi Cream incentus, Kashi Uri incentus. Ama incentus, Chomas.
Geshe has a friend, another Geshe friend that lives at Adelaide. And he was having a conversation with his friend one day, and his friend told him that as he was having a Dharma discourse, he was having a conversation with some students at the center. He asked them, what is the thing that is the kindest to you in this life? Well, someone said money. Another said my husband or my wife, my partner. Someone said the environment or kind of the living environment. No one mentioned the mother.
But this that was Mother kitchen would be Mashi kitchen would say love the and if he sent Soya Amadi kitchen was never any that's the my machine and it means he said the cow showers or cow showers. Ranshin Dinkia, Susu Amalia, and a Savage Yovan, the Ocean Yovan, that Tini Mashi Shevan, that and Loyal. That the Marina, Tanaka cockroach. Child was raw.
So then, at least from the perspective of this practice, where you recognize sentient beings as having been your mother, it is important then to consider the mother in this life. And without having that strong feeling of love or affection to her in this life, it would be hard then to feel that sense of gratitude to other sentient beings, all sentient beings that have acted as your mother since somewhere beginning up until now, and to appreciate their kindness. Whereas if you can't think of a mother in this life, and a sense of innate love would arise with respect to her, then we can also follow the steps of this practice in which we first off recognize all sentient beings as having been our mothers. With a sense of affection, we also recollect the great kindness of sentient beings in having acted as our mothers.
And Matka Chimuyata, Suruyoma, Kitsi, Lolo Corvina, Nigger Piglia, Pegio, Benapesha, Pegio, Condi, that think Katichimu much, Lolo Cornasi, my Suzule, Kati Yansude, Yakuch, some Tuano, Amikovana, Takuchus, Tinima, and a Kiri, Amam Mevana, that then Yimachilia, Chusokashi, that Kahu Veros, indeed Chile. We Ame Sodanzo, Champion Chedanzo, some Yani and some Tamana, Amadita, one you got it some way, but that's sort to us. In the desert, to do some down the kitchen service, the much somewhere, and then I'm a kitchen with the Kashi, Amena, Jachi to Chocolate to Amena Yahu Chemas, Pesha Chemas. So the you got so yeah, Chimbu Chasari, Susu Cotton Savage, Nesper, what is so large? Go Martin the Kavaya, Susu Kamikana, Lam to the Kavaya, Amika used to be champion. This is sort of one, and Amadi she such language. So was this.
So we develop the recognition of the kindness of our mother and appreciation of the kindness of our mother. So of course, if we don't think of the kindness of our own mother, then we're not going to develop the sense of affection to a mother. But if we think about it, like, for example, thinking of the stages of pregnancy, a mother kept us in her womb for 9 months, and then having given birth to us, without that constant sense of care and affection, if we will be left to our own device for days or even for a few hours without taking care of us, we would not have survived. Our mother took care of us in those early stages of our life with great care. She nurtured us, fed us with a great sense of love and care. So through thinking about it, we can develop that appreciation of the great kindness of our mother. It does happen that as we grow up, we tend to dwell on things that have happened to us later on in life. So we think that, for example, my mother hasn't been kind to me. Actually, she was a bad mother. She berated me. She did not give me the assistance that I needed. She did not give me this or that money and so forth. So we think of those things that might have occurred later on in life as we grew up. But then if we think of the early stages of our life where we could not have survived without the kindness of our mother, this is something that is important to think of and to use that as a way to recognize really how kind our mother was to us, to develop that sense of appreciation to her kindness. So Geshe read through the section of the meditation on compassion. So it says, compassion meditation has two parts: taking suffering from the inhabitants, living beings, and taking unsatisfactoriness from the environment which beings inhabit. So when we begin the second part of the meditation on Tonglen, the part of taking, we begin with a quotation from the 7-point mind training that says, giving and taking should be practiced alternately, and you should begin with taking from yourself. So firstly, as it says, we should meditate on compassion by taking from sentient beings their sufferings and the causes of the sufferings. Begin by taking upon yourself all your own actions and disturbing emotions and the sufferings that you will have to experience as a result in future lives, in any of the 5 or 6 states of existence. Imagine that these form black heaps, similar to trimmings of hair, upon your present and mental and physical aggregates, and think that you are thereby freed from these sufferings and their causes in all future lives. Similarly, imagine that you accept the sufferings and sources of suffering of tomorrow, the day after that, the coming months and years, and the rest of your life upon your present temporary aggregates of today, this month and this year, and think that you thereby free yourself from all misery from tomorrow onwards. In taking all the suffering of others upon yourself, you should not keep them in some inconspicuous place, but in your heart, since the very purpose of accepting them is to eradicate your own self-centered attitude. As explained during the meditation on love, you should accept all the originating and resulting sufferings of the denizens of hell at your heart, like heaps of black hair trimmings. Think that your selfish attitude is mellowed and subdued, and that the denizens of hell are free from all suffering without exception. In a similar manner, in a similar way, take the originating and resultant sufferings of all the hungry spirits, animals, and human beings of the 4 continents and the 8 subcontinents, the 6 categories of gods of desire, such as the gods of the 4 great kings, the 12 categories of gods of the form, from the Brahma family to the great result, and the beings of the 4 states of the formless realm, from all the worldly realm throughout the 10 directions, no matter how many there are. Imagine that all these originating and resultant sufferings fall, as if shaved off with a razor, onto your heart, that your own self-cherished attitude is mellowed and subdued, and that sentient beings are freed of all sufferings and the causes without exception. Likewise, apply the same mode of thought by taking on the miseries of the beings of the intermediate state. It is worthwhile to think briefly on taking on each and every suffering distinctively, in general, in particular, as well as the origins in actions and disturbing emotions from all sentient beings of the 4 kinds of birth, and to think of freeing them from them. Since the hearers and so to realize is abiding in any of the 5 paths, and practitioners of the great vehicle below the path of meditation possess slight sufferings and their origins, the manner of taking these is as before. There is nothing to be taken from the hearts of the Buddhas, nor from our own spiritual masters, for we are taught to identify them with the Buddhas. Taking unsatisfactoriness from the environment which beings inhabit reads, think that all the impure runs within 10 directions, which are the products of actions and disturbing emotions, are transformed into pure worlds. Geshe remarked that this doctrine of training in love and compassion by way of taking all sufferings and the origins upon yourself and providing others with every happiness and virtue is a practice for banishing fear. Should you wonder about the source of these practices, they can be traced to the biography of the Manipādra in the Buddhavatamsaka Sutra, which says, and here we have now a few sources, different sources that are used in order to show the sources for the instructions on the meditation on love and compassion through giving and taking. So imagine transferring the sufferings of sentient beings onto yourself and transforming the self into the body that sustains them. The prayer of supreme conduct also says, move all the heaps of suffering of wandering beings, the suffering of the hell beings, animals and spirits, those of human beings, gods and anti-gods, fall on me, may they find bliss. Moreover, the prayer for granting supreme says, love say, may the gods, anti-gods, and great serpents of all the innumerable worlds, from the peak of existence above to the hell without respite below, find happiness as I take on their suffering. The Master Nagarjuna said, may the unwholesome deeds bear fruit from me, and may my virtue bear fruit for them. Shantideva says, equalize yourself with others, then exchange yourself with others. And having seen the faults of self-centeredness and the oceans of good and concern for others, I shall completely give up all selfishness and accustom myself to accepting others. And whoever is keen to give gifts whoever is keen to give swift protection to both himself and others should practice the sublime secret of equalizing and exchanging self and others. And also, if you do not actually exchange your happiness for the sufferings of others, you will not become enlightened, nor find any joy in cyclic existence. And therefore, in order to ally harm to yourself and pacify the pains of others, offer yourself in the service of others and protect them as you would yourself. And whatever the agonies of sentient beings may be, may they all ripen on me alone. The ornament of Great Vehicle Sutra says, finding the mind that equalizes self and others or values others more than self is good. Thus, it is thought that others' welfare is superior to one's own. So this meditation giving and taking is a way of training our mind. So it's not that in an actual way, in reality, we take on the suffering of others and thereby experience the suffering of others. It doesn't happen in reality. It is a meditation in which we visualize that we are taking upon ourselves the suffering of others. We're heaping them up onto our heart, and we also give away to others happiness and well-being. So we visualize that, and this is said to be an exceptional method for developing loving kindness and compassion. It is possible that a doubt will arise in our mind. What's the purpose of doing this practice? Why am I doing it? After all, we are saying that all sentient beings, all living beings, are equal in seeking happiness and well-being and wanting to avoid suffering. Since I and all other living beings are the same in seeking happiness and well-being, why is it that I'm taking upon myself the suffering of others? Why take it on? It is possible for such a doubt to arise.
That logic target. The countries is allowed the Nanzu Duma Yati, Penatachi, Nana Duma Soba, Chedon Duma Soba, Umhong Duma Soba, Tsultrim, and a shoot Chejonti, so shoot Chejonti, Europe that big Nasachiba, Michibaya, and it Duma shoot Choyabata, Kashile, Duma shoot Cheyoba. And trouble your Chiba, Jacob Duma Chejon. Geshe Europe, the culture is short is the Ranjin Shu Chejong Pong, and it short is. This is a shame to Marty, Rando Tsuchi, layer Tashi Chevana, and Ranjin is somebody Shu Chong Joes. Ranjin is some Shu Chong Kazu Joe, T. Tsugi, and Castle touches Doma countries told power in the didn't hit me. Tell don't cheat to you, never see words. Things are any and the Lojongi, Chigoya, never get to words. Not
this way of practice is a method for training a mind. It is a method of training a mind in that when we look at the different types of sufferings that are experienced by certain others, suffering, for example, of sickness, of pain, suffering of hunger and thirst, the suffering of poverty, being impoverished. These are types of sufferings which are experienced, but they are experienced to different extents by different living beings. For some, the suffering of sickness would be great, for others it would be smaller. For some, the suffering of poverty would be great, for another person that would be smaller. For some, the pain of hunger and thirst would be great, and for others it would be smaller. So why is it that we have different degrees, that we experience different degrees of this suffering? Well, they are related to our own sense of self-cherishing. The greater a sense of cherishing is, the greater the suffering that comes as a result of that. So we train in this practice of mind training in which we, for example, take on the suffering of others. We think that we're taking upon ourselves the suffering of others, and through so doing, we reduce our self-cherishing attitude. And when we reduce our self-cherishing attitude, when a situation arises, when suffering all of a sudden befalls upon us, we find that with a lesser degree of self-cherishing, we are made so much, it is possible for us to deal with this situation in a way that is much lighter. Suffering becomes more bearable, or a lesser degree of suffering, when our sense of self-cherishing is diminished. Then the text continues in citing a line from the 70 prayers, which says, I would not mind being thrown into any of the hells as a result of the slightest misdeed by sentient beings who are afflicted by poisonous, disturbing emotions. Whatever the agonies of beings may be, I volunteer to accept them all. May they always engage in virtue and be satisfied by supreme happiness.
Sempre new to what day, Chomachis. The D, but the most the Tomatanaya, then the Jas Chanjus and Yandishi on the Tawatrabi, Umachuanawaya, 비 같이 류의 샤디 리버드 제바 춘춘 젠더니 아니 챤라 제바야 아니 지 세난 잠레바 대한 가시 또시나미 아니 제트버치 요리스 송요라스라 디카스나 로토비 라 장친진기 상바디 다 니지다 전주스는 또가 아니 세기는 또 완자 디도기 아니 랑 류체 시한 땅로야 아니 파사코리오 마레스 대한 가시로 제트로 송이 도스라 아니 남수 마토야 카레스 장친진 파마토와 디레스
When this verse that is taken from the 70 prayers says, I would not mind being thrown into any of the hells as a result of the slightest misty non-virtue by sentient beings who are afflicted by poisonous, disturbing emotions. This verse indicates how non-virtuous actions are promoted by afflictive states of mind. So because of anger, attachment, and so forth, sentient beings behave in non-virtuous way, which causes them various types of suffering. So even if we do not see the meaning as indicated by scriptures such as this, when we look at, for example, what Chandakirti said in his supplement to the Middle Way, when he spoke about the way that the perfections are developed, he spoke about how, for example, even if sentient beings would cut one's own flesh and bone piece by piece, cut it into small pieces, and I have to give it to others. Shantideva says that, Chandakirti says that rather than giving them away with a sense of miserliness, a bodhisattva gives them with a great sense of delight, with happiness in their heart, which indicates this great fortitude that has developed in their mind. So the mind is becoming a mind of great fortitude, which means that the mind is motivated by compassion and bodhicitta, which outshines any other such disturbance that would arise otherwise from sentient beings cutting other living beings, other people, cutting one's own body and bones piece by piece into small pieces. So a bodhisattva delights in giving away their own body in this way for the sake of others. We cannot do it for the time being because we are controlled by an attitude of cherishing ourselves.
Deda chogi tamles rang lutan sotan sunjin kona tamcha sunjin kona chamba tam ni kyabacha deva kungi namen rang gelo mondeta sonu kona liranda sanjitan chevasa sheta rang lutan somye ni li jeja tamcha sheta socha kungi divan tamche da member deda deva nesichi Drone Duma Seda, Shangu Dagi Chawata, and Senda, Demja Shelley, Sinjaki Duma Dagi, taken the ocean, self-content consolidated and goes on sushi. Our show she saw teaching car, then Chavan Sonsos.
We also have a quotation taken from the special verses collected by topic. Say, your body and life should be given to all sentient beings. Love and compassion should be given equally to all living creatures. Earnestly wishing all evil to ripen upon your mind stream. Rejoice in all merits and think of the great being, the Buddha. And you should give away your body, life, and mind. Let the misdeeds of all living beings ripen on me. By accepting all the misdeeds, may these beings avoid suffering. And make other suffering your own and give your own happiness to others. The regular confession of Samvara's ritual also says, may the miseries of all sentient beings mature on me. May they enjoy happiness due to my virtues. In all my lives, may my 3 doors be transformed into the excellent vase and the wish-granting tree. So this is what is taught in many of the great vehicle texts containing the Buddha's words and commentaries to them.
근데 간지 디글로 좀기 같이 왔으나디 랑규야 정바다 인지 중고 인지가 신경 통제야 인지 신경 통제야 정바 이용 상바치가 봐요. 가르팅 그래서 소소 되기 때문에 단 차단 총 기사기 유콜 요마스 이 자님 상바들에서 그러면 차단 총디 자님 담아두디 아니 착사제다 당사지 레거도 디도기 아니 센트루지 아니 참아디기 레게 무슨가 차마로디 디통리고라서 어디서 차단 거에 탁 초비기원이 아니 장미주 chanju sen komyat ta chapman di sa paja cheba seba cheba di an komani to shero ni temba kanji tashi dindi to ni en nyamni cheba no an sanji cheba no di chara rastra o di chi to ya to bezu chi go seres.
Through training a mind in this way, we give rise to loving kindness and compassion in our own mind stream. And when you wonder, what is the purpose of developing love and compassion to others? For what end? Well, without the partiality of anger and attachment, when we hold all living beings as equal, without the sense of partiality, without holding some with anger and other with attachment, we do not have the mental disturbance of afflictive states of mind, of anger and attachment. Without the partiality of anger and attachment, we will not take actions which are oriented towards those camps of those who are close to our heart and those who are distant from our heart. Those actions will be avoided, and therefore our mind will be dwelling in peace. So anger and attachment, this sense of those minds which are partial, anger and attachment, are eliminated with wisdom that realizes emptiness. So this is what we make effort in. This is what we should make effort in the development of wisdom that realizes emptiness, that will eliminate our anger and attachment, those partial states of mind.
Yeah.
So one way is asking, how do you stop taking on the suffering of others, leading to despair? As so much suffering in the world. Lila zabolin la dunga shintu maga tan shintu chewa yoba insan samadhi tomaina yamana di tsul len samadhi tawaina yamana tsul len kombaina kabgabla sem hachan shungwa madmidewa kyowa dende chagin yangados di kandi chikago des.
A lot of borders, lot of Sanji Chedi, so lot of town borders. That is the Chiplan and the chairman or something, no dos, never know. And the woman do was a shaggers, one of the message in which she was. Javung Nanka let them on the Tubatu, so do the average tone. That's the thing he got on something. Then the Jitashu and they say, these are the chance of the
To not fall into a sense of despair, you need to develop courage. You need to develop fortitude. If you try to meditate on those points, and yet if you still faint-hearted and you think that I'm taking upon myself the suffering of others, but may not happen to me, may not come to experience the suffering, this state of mind is not strong enough. In Tibetan language, it is said that it is similar to the case of a rabbit watching the sky. So in Tibetan way of storytelling, there is a story about a rabbit that was lying on its back and observing the passing of the clouds in the sky. And as kind of he saw this display of clouds in the sky, kind of started to be worried and to develop fear of the sky falling upon him, kind of the clouds collapsing down on him. So of course, this sense of fear is senseless. So when then you look at the suffering of others and you develop fear of suffering, it means that first of all, you're thinking of things which are actually of no use to you, that are a bit pointless to think of. How do I experience the suffering? Rather than that, it's important to develop a mind that is strong, a fortitude of mind. So one way of developing a sense of courage in doing that, is fortitude, is to think that I'm just one person, one living being. And if there's a way for me to be of help to hundreds of thousands or tens of thousands of and so forth, other living beings, even if I experience suffering as a result of that, it's still worthwhile, because at least when you think about it in a comparative way, I'm just one person and there's so many others. So even if I have to experience pain or suffering, if it gives others benefit and so forth, of course it is the right thing to do. So it's really important to think about it, for example, in a relative way, in terms of numbers. Have you got any other questions? Miss Grace?
Thank you very much for the teachings, Geshe. Could I please clarify, did Geshe say that all of the Buddha's teachings were given so that we can realize the true Dharma, the actual Dharma, wisdom, realizing emptiness? All the teachings or some of the teachings? All
right, so could you clarify one of the things that Geshe said? So did he say that all the teachings that the Buddha gave are in order to generate the essence of the Dharma, the real Dharma, which is wisdom that realizes emptiness? So is it all the teachings that the Buddha gave, or only one, let's say, part or some part of teachings of the Buddha? Sangye chamdende chu kansumba di tamche di tamala ni toni tok the shera keche de sumbare stende labgerbe siemena chu gashi samamai ba gashi gi tunda di toni tok the shera keche de sumbares
Samavela understands. Kansan Tatu Tombani do Shiraki, Numu Pasha the Jeva, Tachi, and Numu was a Shishi to Pasha the Jeva, and Sevali Tombani do Shiraki Chirimado. We need Tombani do Shiraki Chirimado, Shan Kangi Janche to Maris. In the Dichi was a Dichi, and it just so passion to be Yamne, and it changes the same Yamna and Soba. 간지 동반이 또 쉐르디 쉐르 치어서 미워 사바 세지요 그 딘지 용야 치도 송자 샤바 차고
Yeah, Geshe feels that it is permissible to say that all the teachings that the Buddha gave were oriented towards the development of wisdom that realizes emptiness. After all, the elimination of afflictive obscurations, cognitive obscurations together with the imprints of the afflictions is afforded only by wisdom that realizes emptiness. There is nothing else that can eliminate all of these obscurations. And therefore, the Buddha taught the six perfections such as generosity, bodhicitta, and so forth in order to gear the mind up for the development of wisdom that realizes emptiness.
Pena Nazuta, and Jumbatsuto Sobiame, and in Junga Samba, but Dindigi, and Trochin, and Dominator, Shero Comedy, and Tarazamato, talk to your mothers, Sonata. That Tamjiki was Sanji Komba, Sanjay Tamjiki, Sanji Komba Toya, Ti Ganaya, and Ninji the Chanju Senki, Tap to Zubi Yame, Ra, Le Denny, and Sheriff to Pomber Drongi. 아니 뉴모 가서 시시들 맞아도 제가 산지 공부하듯이 연구를 그때 벌써 내가 지금까지 전에서 서 안디디 소사발 때 토고레스 나 디가메 레베디 상아도시티 쉐데야 아니 셰럽디 피기다 미르고 쇼지 토야 아니 세지 유지래야 산지 공부하듯이 제도 되네 나남이 아니 답이 양이 기지 더 송도스 간지도 참아도 아니 셰럽기 공부를 셰럽기 기야지 셰럽 사보이는 손사보이면 야시잖아 그랬어.
So all of these were methods for developing different facets of wisdom that is swift, wisdom that is clear, wisdom of the profound, and so forth. All these were taught for the sake of generating wisdom. So we have the practice of things which are regarded as imperfections, such as generosity and ethics and so forth. Actually, if we put those practices into action, practicing generosity and ethics and so forth, motivated by the determination to live psychic existence, renunciation, they will, and through that we will also develop wisdom. It will only lead us to the state of liberation. Whereas when we take on these practices, generosity, ethics, patience, and so forth, based on great compassion and bodhicitta, and we use them in order to increase our wisdom, they will result in the state of Buddhahood. So we, for that end, practice for 3 great conscious eons, gather the collections that result in a state of Buddhahood. And also when you look at it from the perspective of the Vajrayana, then the Vajrayana explains practices that enable the practitioner to attain a state of Buddhahood in one lifetime based upon one body. And those practices also employ methods for generating wisdom, for increasing wisdom. And again, wisdom that is profound, wisdom that is sharp, wisdom that is clear, and so forth. All of these are also oriented towards the generation of wisdom.
The text doesn't seem to explicitly say about what you take on in terms of suffering in relation to heroes and Tsultrim realized arhats or Arya bodhisattvas. So I presume that's cognitive observations and any obstacle to achieving your final perfection.
So Alan is saying that the text doesn't seem to clearly indicate what is taken when we visualize stuff. We take upon ourselves things from heroes and so to realize that arhats or those bodhisattvas abiding on the great grounds. You assume that what it means is we take upon ourselves cognitive obscurations which prevent the state of Buddhahood, so that if we take it upon ourselves, then we provide them the opportunity for attaining the final perfection. Yeah. Dila lembe gonta di Geshe ina wa ya. Niaran da chumba ta sarane bachanchi semba ne nenta Just de several hatches and in the Suyamasa. Lea de Kalalenga dealer Halam Shidip Tulang the best, when a consul son is Shidip Lemba in Dilatin Bonzo the Tarchimba Scopala than the Chili rest, then they go
Gyucha, Nimutusum, Gyucha. Right, new is Shari, that's Parchala Soba, and it's Ninging Jubala Soba, Kanji Tanji Kematobalaya, Hard Chuji, and Division Kanyo, Ditsunayan was that drop.
Yeah, you can think that you're taking upon yourself anything that is associated with a fault of the afflictions, which means that also the imprints of the afflictions. So you can think of taking upon yourself the imprints of those afflictions, the negative tendencies, which are those negative states or negative tendencies associated with those imprints. So in short, anything that is an obscuration, you think of taking it upon yourself. Nani?
Teaching Guano mention and launching Yaran Lamga Neva Tunjeta. Teaching Guano mention and Panja to good Jose some Yabana. Lemitus, Jose some Yob, but this summer, Kanji, Nian, Jose some Yob, this summer, and Randos of Nandy, and Tony Suji Muras, but this year was.
It says here, think of freeing them from them, since the hearers and sought to realize is abiding on any of the 5 paths and practitioners of the great vehicle below the path of meditation possess slight suffering in their origins. The manner of taking these on is as before. So here it refers to kind of this slight portion of suffering. So within that, we can also include those cognitive obscurations. So in short, we think that whatever is an obscuration, we're taking it upon ourselves.
So what does it exclude the path of meditation?
Why does it exclude the path of?
It's possessed like something vehicle below the path of meditation. Possessed like something.
So what does it exclude the path of meditation, as it says, and the practitioners of the great vehicle below the path of meditation. Dila di passed away now. Ani gomlan di happy ne ani tonglam agasa gomlan menche di gombo gres. Chizan gomlan dan dolam gi do barbe eman gomlan gi driba di
공론 바디 타마데라스 바발람 여러분 타마도 공론으로스 공론 탈신 산지사
저래 이 갑디라디 그게 비 디테오이나 디안 고난기 맨체스터랑 고난탄 두게르베
공론 디르 디리
So it's probably a fault of the translation. So when it says below the path of meditation, it's below and including the path of meditation. Thank you. So let's do let's say the dedication prayers. May the Supreme Jewel Bodhicitta that has not arisen arise and grow. May that which is arisen not diminish but increase more and more. Due to the merits of these virtuous actions, might quickly attain the state of a Guru Buddha and lead all living beings without exception into that enlightened state. In this land encircled by snow mountains, you are the source of all happiness and good. All powerful Chamrasic Tenzin Gyatso, please remain until samsara ends. Sever of the snowland teachings and transmigratory beings who makes extremely clear the path that is unification of emptiness and compassion. To the lotus holder Tenzin Gyatso, I beseech, may all your holy wishes be spontaneously fulfilled. You uphold the subduer's moral way yourselves in the bountiful bearer of all, sustaining, presenting, and spreading Mahayana victorious doctrine. Who masterfully accomplished magnificent prayers honoring the 3 jewels, Savior of myself and others, your disciples, please live long.